just reach a point where you think I'm running out of knowledge. Or if it's the other way, if you have the knowledge, you reach a point where you're like, my God, there's because I can now do everything, there's too much to do,
You
you
know,
know?
man.
So it was a
I know.
super valuable learning experience doing it from there. But yeah, I've pulled way, way,
Yeah, no,
way.
I think it's a good approach to pull back sometimes. Yeah, I went through that but,
You got to pull
probably
back
like
before you
probably like
power in.
a year ago because the amount of stuff that AI was producing was so much that I could have. So it was creating overwhelm and stuff like that. It was taken out of my trading. So
Exactly.
so there's a
Exactly.
lot of things that goes with it that no one's gonna tell you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You just got to
are
discover it
we are we
yourself.
live now?
We are live. Yeah, yeah.
Right, all
No,
right.
no,
Hey,
no more of those jokes
what,
that you were telling me about the. No, no, I'm making that up. I'm making it up. All right, Maurizio, I'd like to start off sensible this morning, if we may.
go for it, man. Go
Uh,
for it.
all right. So we're on the weekly chart here, right?
Yeah.
And structure. That's what I'm interested in,
Yes.
structure. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay.
kind of start broad, I'll narrow in a bit, and then I'll hand the football over to you. All right.
All right.
So when it comes to definitions, right, I was thinking to myself, what is the definition of structure, or what is my definition of structure? And I didn't get too like lost in it in the minutia, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
if something moves across like that, that's structure to me. And then when that happens,
But
that's the,
can you? Sorry to interrupt you.
I
Can
know,
you?
but it
Can
needs
you,
to start broad so that it'll make sense when I squeeze
okay.
on
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Right. So, well, I was saying about the first thing is that you're asking yourself a question that you don't know the answer to, right? And you're trying
Yeah.
to define the answer without just going to Google. So you start
Yeah.
looking at things, okay, and you think, well, what do I see? Well, you see it go down, you see it go sideways, you see it go up, you see it go sideways, you see it. So it only does three things.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. So it only does
Okay.
three things.
Okay.
So where does the structure live within those three things? So then the next question you ask yourself is, well, these like big one, two, three, one, two, three, is that structure or is that structure breaking?
Yeah.
You see?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then you go back to my what you thought was a terse statement. If it's going sideways, i.e., it's not going down, it's not really going up, then you can think to yourself, well, is that structure? And then you need to start to think a bit deeper about that. And then you get to the, well, okay, then I see potentially what's that? It's the W. Is it the inverse head and shoulders or just the head and shoulders? You see, I got lost with the pattern name there. But that's the next place that you go to. You say, well, okay, then what about these patterns? What about this pattern? What about that pattern? So there's a lot of ingredients that can make up
Yes.
structure and that can make up your own definition of structure. Okay. Now I'm going to
Yes.
park that there because what I wanted to open and say to you was this morning was that I wanted to focus on this structure here. So I'm
Yes.
now calling this whole thing, including this down candle, structure. Why am I calling it structure? Because it fits within these nice little lines. This first line is very important. It's showing a lower high after a downwards move, and we're an hour away from the next candle, and we're potentially going to print another lower high, you know. So when we start thinking about this structure and how things move, and this lower high kind of weakens the structure a little bit. So that's where I'm
Okay.
going to park it, Maurizio, because that's where I
Yeah.
sort of hand it over to you. And that's what the sort of the thought process was to get it to you.
No, and this is great because obviously when that and that's why I always ask anyone, what's your definition of, right? So we start from the beginning. Just keep your
Oh,
screen for just 1 second, okay? My definition of a structure is different. Therefore, I need to go by the definition of your structure because you just defined that accordingly. Okay. The
Hmm.
only thing that I will add in terms of your definition is when you mention, let me just bring my, when you mention things on this area,
Hmm.
right? And you say this went up and this went up. This is not the same as this. All right. I'll tell you why. Okay. And I'm going to tie it up with my definition of a structure. Okay.
Hmm.
So think about it from the perspective that I see a structure is the way that the market move on if it is trending, if it is, and what's your definition of trend? So I'm going to give you mine, right? Or just textbook definition of what trending looks like.
Hmm.
Trending looks like when you have something that is called higher highs, higher lows, or lower lows, higher lows. Have you heard that before?
Hmm. Yep.
All right. So the structure, that's one of the structure, right? Like that's one of the definitions of a structure. So for instance, if you think about here, like if you are analyzing the market at in November, right? In
Hmm.
November, you basically are seeing that you are in an upward structure because you are start think this is going up, this is your lower high, right? And this is the higher high. This is lower high, this is higher high, right? And
Hmm.
in here, you can start seeing that you didn't have a higher high any longer, right? You have something that broke that structure of that trending aspect of it. Okay, that's
Hmm.
my definition of a structure. So a structure is, okay, the structure is trending now because of this higher high, higher lows, lower high, lower lows, whatever, right? And then all of a sudden that structure breaks, right? So
Hmm.
if you keep doing with that sort of mentality right here, you notice that all that, and then you start ranging here. Like, is this a different structure? Like this is a structure break. Why? Because it broke this trending condition. It gives a
Hmm.
higher high. So I don't see this as trending any longer until you create another structure otherwise. Okay? So
Hmm.
with that being said, right here is kind of like the most prominent break of structure. It broke this that already has broken, and it broke that one, right? So now
Hmm.
we are in a structural break. We don't know anything yet until probably here, to be honest. That's
Wow.
the trap. That's the trap of looking at backwards, right? The best
Hmm.
thing to look at this is if you use your replay stuff, because
Hmm.
think about it, like this is a trap of the brain. This is a trap of because we always see what we want to see when things already happen. Period.
Hmm.
Okay, so you have to position yourself on when things, and you don't know that this is a structural break until here, pretty much. You know what I mean? Because and how long was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like fucking 35 candles, right?
Hmm.
35 candles, more than that, like 40 candles, give or take. That's about 40 weeks. How many months at that? Okay.
5 months, isn't it?
All
40
right.
weeks? 8 months, sorry.
Exactly.
No,
So
that would be
you
5 weeks. I don't know. Fucking, why are you asking me maths questions?
and this is another thing in terms of weekly candles that is very interesting is that it's very slow and our brains are not that slow,
Mm.
right? So you start interpreting things that are not there. You know what I mean? So that's the only caveat that I want to sort of spin out. So first of all, clarify what structure means. So when you're here, right, I can definitely see a breaker structure. How I can play this, right? Because I know it's breaking. Now, uh, if you want to play these kind of scenarios, the way that I see it, that I could see it is when I'm ready to short, period, right? Because it broke the structure more than likely, right? This thing is going down, right? I don't see a recovery. Maybe you can back it up with open interest and things like that, right? But then when do you pull the trigger? Because if you if you're doing this on a weekly basis, it's very simple to say, oh, I would have put the trigger right here. Easy.
Yeah.
Very fucking simple. All right? That's simple. Simplicity. Oh man, I'm a fucking good trader.
Mm,
This is a trap of every this is a trap, man, in a way. Why?
mm,
Because
mm,
if you trade in this life, you don't have this information, period. All right? So you broke a structure, then how long do you wait? How long is a piece of string, right? Do you wait here? This looks pretty amazing for a short. I broke structure, I put a short stop loss here. This shit is gonna go down, period,
mm,
right? Didn't happen, right? So then you go here, oh fuck, you know what? I think it's gonna go long. You, you start sort of changing your mind week by week. That's why you know what I mean? Like I kind of, I'm just telling you what I think. And that's
mm,
why I tell you that I back it up with daily data. If because daily, it gives you the daily moves. And more than likely here, right, what you can see is something that is called a sweep of the highs. So think about it from the perspective that this is the high of that horrible candle, right?
mm,
So usually, right, when you have breaker structure, market comes back and sweeps some level. I don't know which one is going to be. There's no exact science. It's no exact rule. It's going to maybe flip that one. That one is the low of the candle that actually broke the structure, right? Or the
mm.
high of the next candle. So is I cannot tell you which one it is. Usually happens around like this, right? And then on, you could perhaps start, playing the structure game, right? But you need to wait until a trigger happens. Okay.
Mm.
So I hope that makes sense and that clarifies a little bit what structure looks like. And let's move on. So for instance, right here, now like if you position yourself here without all this history, right?
Mhm.
Then I could see I could see it. Like this is more clearly, right? Because I can see massive sell point with a sweep of this high. So I do have a higher possibility that next week will go down. How far it will go down, I have no fucking clue. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if it's going to be buyers here. I don't know if it's going to be buyers here. So you start sort of adjusting your risk and adjusting your size. You know what I mean? That's my
Mhm.
take on weekly stuff because weekly changes quite a bit in terms of volatility. Like right
Mm,
here,
mm,
for instance, you can actually see buyers, 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 buyers until this thing bang, right? But you don't know what's going to happen here. You have ideas, right? You have hypotheses, you have probabilities, but essentially that's that. But structure is king, I guess, from the perspective that I'm seeing. You know what I mean? Like, and then you could perhaps drive your structure on the weekly and then go back on the daily to see if you're right or wrong. You start sort of fine tuning your entries, right?
mm,
If
mm,
you
mm.
are if you're looking for the swing play, right?
But I
So,
want
for
to, don't I
instance,
want to wrap this structure around regime though?
I unpack that, please. What do you mean?
Meaning, if we're like when we look at Bitcoin today, right? In this, what I'm labeling as a structure, this kind of compression that I'm seeing here, as volume is declining, the structure is this compressing sort of wedge, and there's a
Yeah.
clear target where price has been before. And would anybody disagree with me that we're maybe three quarters of the way through the bear market? So I still think regime wise, we've got this 25% of the bear market to go. So I'm looking for structure, these lower lows.
What? Let me ask you why. Why you think 25% down the bear market? Because that's a value that you put in there, and then I wanna unpack your brain.
All right.
I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just
Yeah, no,
curious.
it's yeah, just I'm trying to keep it broad without trying to express some kind of technical nonsense that I don't know anything about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Just looking at the Bitcoin chart, if you look at the cycle since Bitcoin was invented and how much it's retraced and when it's retraced, and history rhymes, on average, we tend to retrace 50% before the bear market ends. And cheap Bitcoin is usually at the end of that period going into the following year. So my personal investment theory is that well, I could buy Bitcoin now, but I believe Bitcoin has still got this further, we've only
Okay.
retraced about 30%. So I suppose what I was trying to say is confluence, trying to bring
Okay.
these different
Mm-hmm.
things together. Only I think I've explained what I thought was my kind of structure wrapped around
Yeah.
regime there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm seeing
Makes sense.
weakening structure, volume trending down, and because of looking at some other numbers on Bitcoin, I'm still expecting further downside. But is that all just what I want to see? But then if there was something that I didn't want to see, I'd want to see this structure broken by a weekly close above
Mm-hmm.
it. And then it
Yeah.
would have to start attacking this line. And it's not like I've found that it's not easy, like it's almost fucking impossible for me on the weekly to trade, but to at least sort of understand the market, follow the market a bit more. Like
Yeah.
if we go back to this bit that we were looking at here, let me just get this screen right. Okay. And if we look at it in its what I think is a very sort of simple form,
Yeah.
this candle here is the okay, I'm going to test if we're going to lose this or not, okay? And then it comes into here, but this is not in play. This candle's all about if this is still going to exist. And then we get this second one that closes inside, and you have to start to think, well, hang on a minute, I think we've lost this now. But then you get these weekly closes outside and underneath, and then you're like, well, now we've lost this level as well. And that level, you got like level and structure and regime all kind of wrapping around each other, I think is what I'm trying to express here, which is easy to see on the weekly chart. I'm certainly not suggesting that I could have got an entry anywhere in here. No fucking way. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh right, now it's gone down it's made this entire move. Where would you have got your entry on the weekly? I don't know. How could you possibly have got you see, I think I'm trying to figure that bit out too much, and I think that the answer
Yeah.
lies more in
No,
the daily chart.
but I think you could use your weekly as long you are okay with executing effectively. So for instance, if you think about your structure here, I will definitely action this one and
Hmm.
put my stop loss around here, right?
Hmm.
And I will get it stopped out. Period. That's it. You know what I mean? Like I don't. It's accepting that as well. You know what I mean? I do get it stopped out. But then when they run, right? And then I don't see anything. I'm still structurally biased towards the downside until I see some sort of selling. Then I'll just execute. This is your selling again, right? Can you be fucking wrong? Yes, of course. And you put the stop loss around there. That's a good trade, right? Then next week, I'll start taking some profits, right? Move the stop loss, whatever happens. And then when you start seeing things, you can just take another chunk. And then that's it because I don't know if this is going to get lost. I don't know if this is going to come back. I don't know. And
Hmm.
war happens, Trump opened their mouth, anything could happen here. You know what I mean? But what you're trying to especially when shorting is fun, man. I love it. I love shorting. I love shorting more than going long, to be honest, because the psychology of shorting happens fast. And the reason why it happens fast is there is a lot of like, I think this is a good exercise for everybody. When you think about like you and me or the 100x, we buy spot, right? We buy derivatives, perhaps towards the upside just to capitalize on. When we're wrong, we put the stop losses, and a lot of people do the same thing, right? They have validations and they start getting out of those trades. They start getting out of that thing. So usually shorts happen fast. You get this bang, because you get a lot of stop losses that trigger, trigger, trigger. To the upside is different. Not a lot of people shorts, only traders. Not the regular, I don't know, investor. Say, oh, I'm going to short market. No, they don't. They just sell whatever asset they have. That's the only. So shorting is only it doesn't happen like on the upside, right? When you start liquidating those shorts, we're going to talk about it today. Then it's a different sort of behavior than when you liquidate the longs per se, right? So that could be a framework for you in terms of your weekly stuff. That's how I execute. So based on that, what would you do right now? Like let's say if you want to execute today's based on that of what we went through,
Well,
what would you?
that's a very good question.
Yep.
And it's a question that I haven't solved on the weekly. It just seems too like if this candle forms another lower high,
Yep.
it just seems too garish to put a short on at that point. There's just not enough information uh
I agree. I completely agree.
around it.
Especially, it looks good for short per se, right? Like from the weekly perspective, from your analysis. I'm going through what you just told me, right?
Mhm.
This one sort of guides a really good amount of shorts. You know what I mean? Like that could be a trade in itself, but the fact that
Mhm.
we do have, closing above this level, there's not a lot of sellers there. You know what I mean? Like in my view,
Mm.
right? So I agree with that, and that sort of I agree with that your analysis. If this candle would have been probably a little bit more full right here, probably that will indicate the same pattern. You know what I mean? And that
Mm.
would be a better short than the one now, right? Like that, but that was last week. Okay,
Mm.
that was last week. So this week is a different game, right? So we're gonna go into yeah. I hope that helped, man.
That was
That's
wonderful.
that. Yeah,
I hope everybody got a lot of value out of that. We got about 20 minutes left.
yep. We'll go through. Let me just share my screen.
Let
And
me read
how do
that.
you guys how do you guys feel about Bitcoin today or crypto in general? Let me put in the chat. I have some views, some interesting views. All right, so Sedona short, Jim long. Uh, okay, Todd Black. Do I agree with Reese's analysis? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to, and you know what I mean. With market structure, you can analyze market structure in different time frames. Same thing with trends, right? So obviously, you have the weekly structure and the daily structure and the 4 hour. If you're gonna go in a minute, everything has its own structure, right? So combining the weekly and daily, I think is great. Or if you want to execute on the weekly, perhaps you need to go a little bit broader in the. You need to look for a higher time frame. Uh, let's say monthly, right? Every month that you have, and then execute on the weekly if you want to this low sort of burn, but that's going to be long term, very long term stuff, right? But that's the way I see it. That's why I analyze. That's why we look from the weekly, then I go down to the daily, and usually I like to see as well 6 hours, right? Just to see how 6 hours is kind of for me a really good from a long term perspective. Not long term, from a weekly sort of 2 weeks time frame perspective, because the 6 hours think about it from the perspective it's the closest thing that we have for every session. So you have the Asian session or the London session or the New York session, and every 6 hours, give or take, right, is kind of that session. So that's why I see it, right? So let's start. Okay, so Donna says waiting, looking at the markets until some liquidity comes back. Okay, sweet. Waiting on Trump. I know, man. All right, man. All right, let's go off things and what I'm seeing right now. So the whole freaking week, right? We were waiting for this break of 65,000. That's my level. That's the level that I've been talking about for the whole week, right? We almost got it. We almost got it. It's been very prominent that that's a huge resistance now, right? And wouldn't agree more with what has been happening for the last week, right? So on Wednesday, we almost reached shorts trying to pile up here. They liquidate all the. I'll show you all the stuff on the CVD, all the history. Now, over the weekend, right? Over the weekend, we tried to break that level. We went all the way up to 65,474. However, that was over the weekend, right? And you know how I feel about over the weekend price action. It's very scammy in a way. But with that being said, what I want to highlight is that level, 65K. All man, he's been having a lot of trouble trying to break that. Which it makes me think that this is a level to watch for, right? And I keep saying it, you can see it when he breaks, this share is going to perhaps, the next one immediate resistance is probably around this one, the 67,000, give or take, right? But if we do have that force, this is the trade that I'm waiting for, right? Can this fail? Yes. Okay. Can this fail and start now going towards the downside? Yes. But let's talk about market structure now. Let me just clear all this stuff. This is
Market structure whilst inverted. Imagine that.
man. We will. This is I'm gonna talk about market structure from the daily perspective. Okay, not the weekly, not the 4 hour daily perspective only. Okay, I'm making decisions on a daily, therefore daily is the one that I'm using. Okay, just delete all this stuff. Okay, so and one thing to do as well that I usually do is you take the market structure and then you back it up with open interest or with CVD, just to see where if you're kind of like if you add more fuel to that thesis, right? So always go from the perspective that we are detectives and we're trying to find out if we do have enough evidence to sustain a case. Period. Right. And that's what I'm trying to see, right? Like and obviously, with any case on a investigation, things could turn different ways at any given moment, right? Things that you didn't see, things that you weren't there, things that so that's the best analogy that I can think of. So with that being said, let's talk about highs, right? So if I draw highs, right? So we have this high right here, right? And we have another high right here, and we have another high right here. All right. So I could perhaps say that this is a high, this is a higher low. Yes and no. This is very choppy, and the reason why is not a clean structure. The only clean structure that I'm getting is the one that I highlighted, probably, yeah, that was in July, that we kind of have higher lows. You can actually see here, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, until here. Oh no, we haven't broken that low yet until this is the first time that we broke that low. Okay, and then so think about it from the perspective that I told you on the weekly, right? This is kind of the first time that was on the 28th of July. That's why we I took out a lot of positions and I moved the stop losses and things like that. That we broke that structure. We broke it. And structure, it doesn't mean that we always have a lower candle, like a bearish candle. This one right here was the first time that we actually broke that structure. Why? Because it broke this low, period. What that means, think about it from the perspective of, and this is what I always sort of trying to think. The psychology behind how higher lows are created. And I could be wrong. This is just my psychology, but do you guys give me any thoughts of what you think the psychology behind a higher high or higher low is created? And let's talk about a higher low, right? How this structure is created, psychologically speaking.
What
I'll
a
give you
great
2 minutes.
question. What a great question. I'm just going to keep quiet and let people answer that. What a great question.
Okay, waves of intent. Yes, can see where you're heading. People are hopeful. Trump's quiet.
Just
It just
messaging.
messes with my mind. All right.
Well, there's a market right there. There's a
This is it, man.
yeah.
This is a very small sample of what the market is in a nutshell, right? And what I want you to understand is what the market is. The market is an auction period that happens every single second. All right, that's it. Think about it from that perspective. The best way to understand markets is just understanding what an auction is, right? And an auction, right? If you go into a hot suburb in your city, right, and you want to buy a house, and there is an auction, and you have you and your wife, and you want the house, you want to pay more. Don't matter why, because you want the fucking house, right? And you want to make your wife happy or whatever, right? And you want to pay more, right? And you bet and you bet and you bet and you get it, right?
Mm.
If you don't want it, right, and the house is shit, and you think it's another house down the street, right? Would you bet on the same house? No, you don't. You just stay still, right? You just don't bet on it. All right. From that analogy, think of the perspective that the lows, right, as the are people willing to pay a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That's how I see, and that's how the higher lows are created. Okay, at this point, right, people are not willing to sustain these lows any longer. I'm not saying that that's because this creates something that is called a deviation. I'm going to tell you that what it's all about in terms of market perception. But that's think about it from that perspective, right? So in here on Thursday and Tuesday, 28th of July, at the end of that day, people are not willing to sustain that one, period, right? So are willing to pay less for Bitcoin, okay? Now, I don't know that yet, but this, right, this high right here, right, is actually getting lower, right? So let's have a look at what happens on the other side of the spectrum. So if it gets lower, so people are perhaps either selling, right? Because oh no, that's not gonna get there. You're selling, right? Let's say take the same analogy of a house. Now you're going to sell your house, okay? And you're going to sell it at auction, and you needed the money, or there's a lot of competition down the street, right? Then someone offers you, I don't know, 60, probably $100,000 less of what it could have been last week. And you say, I fucking let's take it, right? So this is the behavior of the lower highs, right? So what we hear is a compression of lower highs and high like broken structure. So here, that's when usually start on ranging mode, right? Because market hasn't been decided yet. So right now after the broken structure, right? I don't have a clear picture. I don't have a structure. It doesn't tell me any structure whatsoever unless you see something different, right? The only thing that it could actually break out that structure is either a failure, right? A huge failure here, and we're going to start driving down. But I'm seeing higher. You know what I mean? I'm seeing higher. So it's very, very difficult now. It was easier before, right? Based on this, right? But right now, I don't have enough information to make a judgment, a clear judgment. I hope that makes sense, right? So this is the way I see it. Like I say, this is just my own way. I'm not saying that this is implicitly right or wrong. I'm just giving you my uh honest way that I see the market. Okay, so for example, right now, August traditionally, hold on, James. Okay, for example, right now, August traditionally a drop of 20% or more. Is that grid or just cycle? I have no idea, mate. It could be both. Whoever tells you is either one, they need to have better data because now you're going to a trap. Is August always going to be short? Is you know what I mean? I don't know, and you don't know yet. That's why I see the market from what's happening and what type of buyers we have at different levels. Okay, so what I can tell you is that July was ranging, right? July started at uh here and we finished up here, so it was a upward, right? But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I'm not that big on cycles, to be honest. It gives you a broad perspective, I think. Ian, do you have anything to add there in terms of grid or cycles?
I it's not no, other than what I mentioned earlier, that I am in agreement with James's kind of 20% drop. Whether that's
Mm-hmm.
directly attached to August or not, I'm unsure.
Mm-hmm.
But I would put it within that broader scope of, then yeah, I guess I believe that there is a cycle, that when we cycle around to these bear markets, we generally retrace on average about 50%. And right now we're roughly about sort of 30%. That's, from for the all-time highs. But
Mm-hmm.
numbers have a way of making sense even when they shouldn't.
I know. I know.
I
The
have a
interesting
friend,
thing.
sorry, just to interrupt. I have a friend who's a
Yep.
statistician, and like the way that they view numbers is just, it's a different world to the way that I view numbers. I'll park it
Mm-hmm.
there. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very easy to get lost
Yeah.
in
So
numbers.
I agree. Obviously, that's why I don't. It's not my main driver. Because think about it from the perspective that if you make that your main driver, you're always going to be attached over July, over 20. You know what I mean? You don't going to be able to read the market the way that the market behaves, and the market will behave differently this year than the next year.
Mm.
That's just what I've learned for the past thousands of trades that I've done, right? And you could only be right or wrong, depends of how you read it today with the information that you have today,
Mm.
right? Anything that you think in the future, then you bias in towards that. So 4 year cycle, fucking money index, liquidity index, whatever, man. Like
Mm,
there's
mm,
so
mm.
many stuff out there. Their
Sorry to interrupt. We got
guidelines.
just a 5-minute warning,
Oh
dude.
shit.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Otherwise, let me just I'm gonna stop this screen. Just let me bring the other screen. So we go with uh the what I'm gonna show you because there's not much to be honest that I want to show you. I've been talking about those levels over and over again. Where is my all right here? Okay. So this is now the CVD, right? What's going on? So Mike has been dead for the whole weekend, right? Now, now that you understand my definition of a structure, it's very important to understand the structure of the CVD as well. I do pay attention of those breaks of structure of CVD. Why? Because that's kind of it perhaps shows you, right, that the buyers and easing off, right? So you had a massive influx of CVD from this level here. You can actually see it like is right here. Okay. CVD start heavy right probably I will say around here. You can start seeing and you had a breakout of CVD structure right here. Okay. Now from then on, it's been holding strong, right? Holding strong. But we start seeing some easing off right here. So what that means is spot selling. Okay. What that means is people start selling their stack on Bitcoin. Okay. So now we are on that. That's why we just see a huge drop here, right? And we start seeing a lot of liquidations now towards the downside, right? People that went long, people like me that I'm thinking, oh fuck, this is going to go great. On Bitcoin, breaking that 65,000 level, right? Which I still think is possible, right? Then that's why on Friday I don't know you guys how much I started losing confidence on that breakout, right? I'm still, in terms of probabilities, I was 70-30, then I was 65, then I was 60, now I'm sort of 55, right? So I'm gonna keep dropping my confidence on that because it's taking quite a bit, and now CVD is losing ground. That's kind of how sustained perhaps what could happen, right? Or at least today. So if we do have a drop, right, what are the main levels that I'll be watching? Okay, so I think this one right here, this is the first structural break that happened here, right? So obviously this one is 64,500. So that's the level that I want to be watching, right? So if I should, I think that's my first target profit in a way, right? Because I don't know if are going to be buyers at this level, all right? And usually that happens, you get liquidated, you get people that get liquidated, and usually, right, you get this sort of kind of behavior, and then off you go. It's grabbing liquidity to actually go to upwards. Are we going to get there? Who knows, right? But that's something that I'm watching. Another thing to watch, obviously, it's harder on small time frames, is seeing that auction theory that I just told you, right? You can actually see that like if people keep buying of higher lows, then you do have that. So you have a break structure under 30 minutes. However, I don't want to go in there because that's sort of scalping in a way. But that's what I'm watching. Okay, I'm watching this very closely now. Another thing that I'm watching is the reaction of open interest. So open interest, right? You can start to see that it has a huge rise on open interest, but they are more than likely they're shorts. Why? Because now you had a huge candle liquidating all the shorts and all this open interest drop. So I don't know if it's more shorts piled up here, right? 65 seems to be a really good level to short, right? And if there are more shorts, market's going to continue that way. So that's basically what I'm waiting for and watching. Is getting very rangy. So I don't want to short, but I want to just be aware of that possible breakout, right? So based on that, let me talk about the positions that we had. So I added WorldCoin. So we had this huge trade that was successful. We still hold half of this one. And this we got stopped out on another one. And now I added this one here. All right. So I think the reaction that I saw over the weekend, I think is positive. This one could still get stopped out. Be mindful if we do get that drop on Bitcoin, that one is going to go south. But I want to add risk, and that's the only one that I really like to add risk on, right? Ondo, fucking unfortunately, it was doing good. It did this, it tried to break out, but they went through the founder died and their mother trying to getting gain of the company, and is legal fiasco at the moment. I still once that's solved, I think we still have another possibility of Ondo. Besides that, I'm still keeping hype. Hype is still looking good. Lead still good. That's pretty much it, guys. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah, Todd, thank you. There is going to be some fundamentals released this week, so I'll be watching on that. And but I still have a really good chance that we have that breakout, right? It is getting compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed. I'm not seeing like the shorts are not winning. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Right here, the shorts won, and you can actually see the reaction of the shorts, right? Right here, every short is being sort of liquidated, right? You can actually see that all the liquidations that happen here, bam, 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 bam. So that gives me a little bit of confidence, a little bit of more probabilities that we might have that breakout, right? So that's why I'm staying still now. I'm not adding any more risk. One coin or two coins is enough to add risk on before that breakout happens because I'm front running that breakout. Okay,
Three
at this
minutes,
risk of.
Maurizio, and you
All
got to be
right,
on the
that's
next
it. I'm
call.
on.
Cheers,
All
everybody.
right.
Ta-da.
I